What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. If you haven't been here before, my name is Josh, and today I think I'm going to talk a little bit about sobriety. So before I get started, make sure you comment, like, subscribe. Let me know down in the comment section um, what are some topics that you'd like me to talk about, or what are some things that are going on in your life right now. Um, that's maybe kind of been on your mind that maybe you'd like to hear me touch on. But today we're going to talk about sobriety. So in some of my previous videos, I've talked a little bit about how drinking was a big part of my life and how the military really kind of sparked my drinking and how much of a part of my life it was. Um, and as of today, it's been a little over 2.5 years that I've been sober from alcohol. Um, I used to smoke weed a lot, and um, I've been weed free for a little over a month now. But I've been sober from alcohol for over 2.5 years, and I kind of want to talk about that journey and kind of how I've got here, why I continue to maintain sobriety from alcohol. This isn't going to be a video that's like, you need to do this, but if you're in a position in your life where maybe you are thinking about it for whatever reasons, this video might be for you. So to kind of get started on it, about 2.5 to 3-ish years ago, my mental health hit absolute rock bottom. I had a best friend in town, and for whatever reason, that night, uh, my life just kind of caved in. And it was one of the scariest moments of my life for myself and my wife. And I had to call the suicide hotline. And I don't really know what brought it about. Um, Obviously, alcohol played a role in that, but I think it was just kind of a copium of things that came together, and it all just transpired in that night. And luckily I had a good friend group, and one of my buddies from Georgia who I used to serve in the military with flew in that night and stayed the weekend with me. But since that night, which was May 18th of 2022, 2023, May 17th, May 18th, I have not had a sip of alcohol. I've had some non-alcoholic beverages, which are great, but I don't drink those to fulfill like an alcoholic need. I do it more for the social aspect, um, but it's very rare that I actually like drink those. So, you know, the reason I decided to stop drinking was because the night that I called the suicide hotline, with my wife there with me, and I spoke to a few people, it scared the shit out of me. Just completely transparent, it scared the living hell out of me. And I think from that moment, the very next day waking up, I knew I had to make some change. Something had to be altered in my life because it was going in a place that wasn't healthy. And ultimately, it looked like it was going in a direction that was going to lead to me not being here anymore. Now, I'm not saying you have to hit rock bottom in order for you to pursue sobriety, but what I do want to kind of lend an ear to in this video is just some of the benefits that I've noticed, and just overall how like sobriety has been for me. So I haven't had any urge to drink. Not that I ever had urges to drink when I did drink, but I was the type of drinker where there was no limit. I would never have classified myself as um, an alcoholic or someone who was dependent on alcohol. But when I drank, it was to get fucked up, and then when I got fucked up, I did stupid shit. I, didn't think straight. I made bad decisions. I said terrible things to people. I hurt people in my life. And that wasn't every time, but it was enough, obviously, to make me realize that this wasn't something that I necessarily needed in my life. And I don't want to say that sobriety straight up fixed my life, but what it did do was it started to put things in perspective for me. And what I kind of mean by that is there was so much pain and undealt with stuff mentally that I wasn't addressing in my life, that I was kind of masking and numbing through the drinking. And when I stopped drinking, it allowed me to sit with those issues sober. And I think that that's like a real big reason, especially with men, why they drink is, and again, I'm generalizing and I know this may not fit for everyone, but I think a lot of men and people in general, but a lot of men drink because they're trying to cope and numb something that they're afraid to address sober. And, hopefully no one ever has to come to a life altering moment in their life to eliminate alcohol. But I will say, for me at least, removing alcohol from my life, it allowed me to sit with a lot of issues that I had been ignoring in my life sober. And that was super difficult. I don't want to make it seem like sobriety was easy. I'll put it this way. Sobriety was easy and is easy for me from the perspective of I don't have any urges to drink. I don't even really think about it. It's not something that ever comes up for me and I'm like, oh, I'm tempted to drink, or I'm at a party with some friends and they're drinking, or I'm out at a bar. I mean, again, I live in Charleston, South Carolina, so like drinking is a big part of the culture down here. You have the beaches where people drink. Downtown Charleston is a college area to some degree, and the bars are very popular for their drinks, and the food and drinking culture is big down here. And I never feel the desire to do that. Now, a plus of that is we kind of live in a society now where there are a lot of other options for drinking, meaning there's non-alcoholic beverages. Society as a whole has sort of opened up to the idea that you don't need to drink to have fun. So that has helped. But what it wasn't easy with is dealing with some of those issues and those mental health things that I was ignoring. And that was the real challenge of sobriety, was not having an outlet necessarily to cope with those things. Now, I did lean on weed heavily for years. And for a very long time, weed was necessary almost for me to somewhat survive, because there was so much pain and hurt that I was going through during my extremely depressive phase where I was very suicidal, and weed kind of kept me afloat for a lot of that. Now, I understand how that may be somewhat contradicting of each other, where you were smoking weed and but you weren't drinking, so you were kind of giving one up for the other. And like, yes, that is true, but for me, we did not have the same negative consequences that alcohol did. Even up until recently, when I decided to quit smoking weed, weed had never, in the 2 years that I pretty much smoked daily, it never caused any harmful negative things in my life. What I decided to do was quit weed was because I didn't need it in my life anymore. I realized that I was becoming somewhat, it was routine for me, but it wasn't ever a thing where I was making poor decisions. I was hurting people. I was lashing out at individuals because I was high, which were things that were happening when I was drinking. Um, so being sober from alcohol specifically, it for one, it changed who I was physically. You know, when I was at like the peak of my drinking, I was probably around like, I'm 6'1". I've had an average body type my entire life, but since the military, I've always been in that 215 to 220 range. I think my highest I was like 230, and it wasn't a good 230. I've always been one of those guys who said like I don't really care what the number is on the scale. I just want to feel and look good. So it wasn't a good 220, 230. And when I quit drinking over the course of a year or two, I lost significant weight. So the health and the physical benefits of eliminating alcohol from my life were incredible. On top of that, there was this like mental clarity and confidence that came with it. And this may vary for person to person, but I I realize now that I am more confident going out into social settings sober than I was when I was drinking, which seems kind of contradicting of it because, alcohol always acts as kind of this numbing agent, and it kind of, boosts your ego and it makes you more confident. You're not as insightful and you're not thinking as much. So it gives people the confidence because they're not really thinking straight to do things that they probably wouldn't do. But I found that being sober gave me this unusual confidence about going out and being in public in party or drinking settings because, and I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but for some reason it gave me this feeling that I knew I was in control in a room where no one else was. And if someone was going to do something stupid, I knew that I wasn't going to react in a way because of alcohol. I wasn't going to be tempted to react to someone because of alcohol. If I was reacting or responding to them, it was because I truly felt like I was being pressed in a certain way that was harmful and I needed to address it. But even then, as a sober person, I was going to address it in a way that was much more, diplomatic than if I had been drinking. So it kind of gave me this like Superman cape of feeling like I have a leg up on everyone in a weird way. And I don't mean that in like a condescending, oh, I'm superior because I don't drink. I don't have any ill will or any negatives beliefs about people who drink. I feel if you are able to drink and you control yourself and it's fine for you, go for it. But for me, it just became it was a very unhealthy relationship. It controlled a lot of my decisions. It controlled what I was doing that night and who I wanted to hang out with. It controlled how late I stayed. I mean, when I drank it consumed my identity, and that was really harmful. And being sober, I'm in control of myself entirely. And I think that that's a really scary thing for a lot of people, but it's a really positive and strong thing. And here's why. It's scary because it puts all the responsibility on you. I think we've all had those fuck up moments when we've drank or we've received this where, you are out and you do something stupid and you wake up and you send that anxiety text to someone like, hey, my bad. Or you've been on the receiving end of it where someone sends you that text and you're like, it was fine. Like, but regardless, when everyone kind of has that anxiety hangover the next day, and you're able to excuse the behavior because you were drinking. And in our culture, that's kind of okay. But when you're sober and if you do something stupid, you don't have an excuse. Like That was your kind of default outlook at that moment. You chose to do that. There was nothing else in your system that contributed to that. And I think for a lot of people, that's a scary realization, but it doesn't have to be that way. A counter to that where you're completely in control and you're putting yourself in a position where you aren't going to have to make those types of difficult decisions or that send that anxious text because you know who you are in that moment. There's nothing contributing to your brain chemical makeup or whatever that is going to lead you in the wrong direction. So I think in a lot of ways, sobriety kind of confused me from the perspective that I thought it was going to be really difficult to stop drinking because I was going to have these urges or cravings or these temptations because I was always going to be around people who drank. And what I realized was the difficult part of it is I was going to have to start changing things about myself and my life without alcohol involved in it. And that was really difficult for me. But through that time and through that work that I did, excuse me, I was able to grow from those issues and I was able to finally address a lot of those problems that I was likely ignoring or, masking because of the drinking. So I think to kind of like round out this video, this is by no means me trying to say that sobriety is the answer. For me, as of right now, I don't foresee myself drinking ever again. I'm not saying that that couldn't change. Maybe one day I wake up and I realize that I'd like to go have a glass of whiskey or I'd like to go have a beer. But I've done it for so long now, not drinking, and I realized how much more I enjoy life, how much better I feel about how I feel physically and mentally. I like how I look better. There's so many things that are about me that have changed that I can contribute somewhat to sobriety. I'm not saying who I am now is entirely because of sobriety. What I will say is that I don't think I would be here if I hadn't gotten sober. But again, that looks different for everyone. So I don't want you to be watching this and think this is one of those videos where the person's telling you, like, you have to get sober to be better. You might not, but maybe you just drink a little less. I don't know. Maybe you have one less beer. Maybe you decide to go cold turkey from it for a little bit. Maybe you decide to cut back a little bit. You just have to have an honest conversation with yourself about what does alcohol mean to me? Who do I want to be? And am I lying to myself about the negative impact that this has on me? I hear so many times, even from people in my friend group who I don't think, or I don't believe they even think that they have a drinking problem, but they constantly talk about how, they want to stop drinking for a certain amount of time, but they never could. They never can because it's just too difficult. And all that really is just a mindset perspective of just limiting yourself. We're just so used to drinking that it's hard to imagine your life without it. And for me, it took such a catastrophic event for my mindset to change. I'm hoping that that doesn't have to happen for everyone, but for some people it may. If that is you, maybe this is a sign. If it's not you, maybe that this is just some type of educational video and you're watching this because you're probably thinking about it to some degree. So, yeah, I guess that's really kind of, all I want to get across is that, even at 34 in an area of the country where drinking is a pretty strong thing to do, I feel like I'm living the best part of my life that I have, and that's without alcohol, and that's being sober, alcohol sober. And I honestly never thought that I would have been sober, but I am so glad that I am. And I hope that if you're watching this and you're thinking about it, maybe you don't have to do it today, but maybe this video, maybe this conversation is that nudge in that direction that gives you that motivation to maybe give it a shot for a day or an hour or a week, however long it is, just give it a shot and just see how you feel, you know? So with that being said, I just want to say, I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. Again, please feel free to, comment, like, and subscribe. It would mean a lot to me in this channel. Go ahead and leave any comments in the comment section below about, anything you'd like to see me talk about. Or if you agree or disagree with this, how has sobriety changed your life? If you are sober, if you're thinking about it, what are some things that you're taking away from this video? And with that being said, I'll see you next time. See ya.